Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 382 of the Running Rogue podcast. Here with James Dodds, trying something new this week. How's it going, sir?
It's good. This is really exciting.
It is exciting. We're on video for the first time, hoping to create more of these video podcasts. Excited to be launching the book this week, which I talked about on last episode, but wanted to follow up in conversation with you because our plan in the works is to basically do a book club where we go weekly, chapter by chapter through the book to guide the topics of our podcast over the next year here in 2026. And it'd be good to have a co-host, be good to have it on video. So exciting stuff in the works here as we launch Running the Rogue Way.
You know, it excites me because it's like we can meet our athletes where they're at. I mean, we tell them to get 1% better. So this is us just adding a little more as we go, like trying to get 1% better.
I think it's more than 1%, you know,
Yeah, this is drastic.
but we will now, you know, this is like 100% and then we'll incrementally get better as we go on the video stuff because we're playing with lights and cameras and all sorts of stuff that we haven't played with yet. But exciting stuff. Excited to have the book out. Obviously talked about that on last week's episode, really setting the groundwork for the core principles of our training philosophy, which take us all the way back to episode 1 of the podcast. You had some reactions to it and wanted to kind of talk through it a little bit more depth. So this will be kind of a follow-on episode from my discussion last week on those key principles. So where would you want to start?
Well, I want to interrupt just a pinch and just say first, like, congrats. I know this is a team effort, but, you know, so many people are excited, and I know you've been at it for a really long time, so there needs to be a special kudos to you as well. So congrats on this. This is really exciting.
Thank you. Well, I mean, we share that. Congrats. You were integral in getting it done for sure.
Yeah. And then as I listened to you reiterate the principles, I guess that's another thing I wanted to say is I think there's so much value to reinforcing things. Like the original Lydiard article that I read when I was like 25, or I don't even remember how old I was when I first read it, but it's something I revisit once a year. And so I think this is great to kind of reinforce fundamentals with so many athletes. A, and B, I guess as I was listening to you talk last week, I thought, which of the principles, the core principles is probably the least sticky when it comes to a belief for athletes, and it was peaking. I think everybody gets peaking conceptually. They go down their list. They're like, I heard my coach say this, like peaking matters. And then when they go about their lifestyle, I'm like, wait, do you really buy into peaking? And it's largely centered, it kind of reveals itself either on the other side of a race or when people try to rush towards a race where they haven't had a smooth and consistent season. And so I don't want to give it all away just yet, but I'm just curious if that's waking anything up in you, if you feel as though that's the one people maybe say they understand but struggle to believe. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you are. I mean, I think that isn't the one I would point to, but I think it's one to point to for sure. And it definitely, you know, I have reactions as you talk it through there. The one that gets to me that I think people struggle with is the running by feel concept. So that's the one I would highlight as a struggle for people, but you know, we can maybe trade perspectives on why that's the one. But I agree with you that peaking is a struggle because people seem to want to, they seem to refuse to really put their eggs in 1 or 2 baskets a year, 3 baskets max, and just go for it. Put all eggs and all energy towards those 2 or 3 key races. And there's so many reasons why that's hard, but why would you say it? Why do you think it's hard for people?
Well, I think this has got to be pretty nuanced because again, if you are just having a conversation with someone and it's all conceptual, it's like, hey, do you understand what peaking is? They would say, yes. So do you believe in peaking? Verbally and mentally, they would say, yeah, I believe in peaking. Like that's an important component of this whole equation. And so that's the stated belief. But then there's the lived belief. And so you go and you get into the experience. And so as long as everything goes really well, people peak, they crush their race, they get a PR. They're like, yeah, I believe in peaking. But you go back to the nuance of training and you're like, wait, they're like 8 weeks out from their race and a workout goes poorly. And they instantly say, well, if marathon pace for 2 miles was that hard, how could I possibly run that for 26? I'm like, you're revealing to me right there that you want like an apples to comparison, but you removed peaking from the whole equation. So you drew this conclusion that if it's that hard, I can't do it on race day, which you're telling me you're basically eliminating peaking from the equation just by that simple admission.
Right.
And then I see it on the back end of racing too. So, let's say someone crushes a PR, they go through that recovery phase for, let's say, 3 weeks. They get into their first couple priming workouts, and then they're like, whew, I have no idea how I ran X pace 6 weeks ago for 26 miles, because doing that for 1 mile here, I'm just dying. Or maybe my fitness is going backwards, or maybe they get into their head. And in the moment, it's not about judging that act or anything. I'm not picking on the athlete here. It actually comes from a place of compassion. I'm like, but you remember peaking, right? Like
Right.
You understand that, yes, it was your hard work and your determination on race day that all came together in that moment, but that come together, that's part of peaking, right?
Right.
And so I think someone who really knows it down in their bones that peaking matters is able to, 6 weeks after their race, when they're not hitting a workout, they're able to be like, well, yeah, I'm not peaked. Why would,
Right.
does that make?
Yeah. I mean, because you have to come off the peak, detrain in order to retrain. And it's a necessary part of reaching the next peak is actually coming down to the valley again of fitness. But it is so hard. And I think it's as much mental as it is anything else, because you have to fight off the FOMO. That's an element, right? Like, oh, all my friends are doing this race, I want to jump in there, but you've already got yours picked out, right? So there's an element of that. There's also an element of doubt that creeps in of, well, I want everything to point to the fact that I can do this, in October, starting a training program in May. But by definition, it won't until you get to the day when it all comes together, tapered and everything else. And so, there's that part, just that self-doubt that creeps in. Then I think there's also just an ability to let go of measuring yourself all the time. We talk about, and I talked about on the episode, there's people have too many A races and too many B races and not enough C races. Well, the C race concept, I think, is a great one, but it requires a mentality that goes with the peaking concept. That means you embrace the outcomes of a C race without judgment on yourself. But so many people do a C race and then they're disappointed. And then they're like, oh, but I wanted, but it wasn't, I thought I could do, and now it means I can't, And so they have this mind F that happens with a C race that is completely nullifies the purpose of a C race. And so what is it required to actually fully embrace that as a C race? It requires the mentality to say, it doesn't matter the outcome. I'm not going to judge myself based on the outcome. I'm not going to judge my A race potential based on the outcome. I'm going to do it. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to get what I can out of it. I'm going to take my lessons. I'm going to walk on to the next. And that is, as we know, because we see it in our groups, we know it's just so hard to have that mentality. I mean, that's black belt level mentality, and most people aren't there yet. And so it's a lot of these mental elements come together to make you fully embrace the concept of peaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on the backside, it's that mental aspect of, okay, just because it feels terrible now doesn't mean something about me. Again, it's that self-judgment. Because we want it to be linear. We want our progress to be linear, but it's not.
Yeah.
You have your peaks and valleys, and you have to ride those in order to get to the next peak.
Yeah. And you mentioned it's black belt, and it is. I think it's black belt to be able to live in it, rest in it, and sort of have that like calm sense of knowing where you're like, I trust it. I'm good. I don't need to be at peak fitness right now. I know exactly where I'm at. But I think to get there, it's not as big of a jump. Practice. It takes time and practice and dealing with those kind of nerves or reactions or whatever wells up in an athlete after, let's say, a bad C race, and they slip into that thinking. But acknowledgement really is, I think, just sitting with this conversation and acknowledging it, or writing it down. Sometimes telling yourself, I've got these 2 C races lined up. May is going to be my A race. It's highly likely that even though I do those C races, I might get a little bit in my head and expect that I want the total kit and caboodle to come together. I know that's thought's going to come. You just acknowledge it on the front end. And then you go back to everything else that's basic, prepare for your race, show up on race day, like crush, etc. You can go back into race strategies, very simple, pragmatic tips and tools. But I just think there's a value in what we're doing right now. Like talking about it, have an athlete go, oh yeah, cool, check, I acknowledge it. You get used to doing that 5 or 6 times. All of a sudden you're moving into that. I don't want to make it a mystical, out of reach feeling.
Because it's okay to have those thoughts, right? It's just how you manage them. Because they're going to come. That, a little bit of the devil on your shoulder is going to say, oh, but you're not good enough. And then you just become better at dealing with it. But I like the idea of pre-planning your thought process around it, because that allows you to write down, say to yourself, I am not allowed to be mad about the outcome of this race. I am not allowed to judge my potential in the A race based on the outcome of this C race. Like having those notes beforehand and internalizing it will help you on the back end when you do have the devil on your shoulder being like, shoot, you weren't good enough. And then you can say, no, I actually wrote it down. I'm not allowed to judge myself because that is part of it, right? That's how you deal with these things, is practicing the mental stuff in advance, afterwards. And will you magically be there, tomorrow? No. But as you try that on and wear that for a bit and go into these C races and have reactions that you're able to work through, then it'll become old hat. And it's like, okay, no big deal. This is a C race. I don't get to be mad about it. I don't get to judge myself based on it. It's one piece of the puzzle, one tiny piece of the puzzle. So those are all good tips. But there's also just the recognition to me, as if we step back from it all, that unless you peak on a certain day every 5 or 6 months, you're not going to reach your best potential. Can you run well if you have several races in a window that you're targeting? Sure. Can you reach your highest potential? No. And so you have to embrace that. And I think if you do, then you start to see it manifest. You're like, oh, okay, boom, it hit, you have a hit, and then that becomes reinforcing.
Yep.
So, all right. So peaking is yours that people struggle with, which I can't disagree. But I feel like this running by feel concept, in some ways, when I was going back, thinking about that first episode that we recorded now 9 years ago, talking about this point of running by feel and it being important, it feels like we're in such a different place now in terms of technology and how people use and are relating to their technology, that concept is like a dying art that's falling away. This ability to judge yourself, not judge, but to gauge your effort and not have to be obsessed with what the pace is on your watch. And the thing I think people forget when we're out there telling people, hey, run this pace, and we use race names to try to get people into certain pace ranges, not because we want them to think, oh, 10K pace can necessarily correlate to 10K pace, but rather it's an effort level that correlates to physiological development, that correlates to improvement. And so we use that as, in some ways, kind of a bad or broken way of naming things, just because I think it creates an expectation that's wrong. But the point isn't the pace. It's not the number. It's not even necessarily the heart rate. It's how does this correlate to what I'm trying to accomplish on the given day? And to be able to gauge that without your watch, just by how you feel, it's a dying at a minimum, maybe completely lost art at this point. And I think that has both an aspect of learning to actually be in touch with your body. There's a physical learning process, but then there's also that mental crutch that the watch becomes that people struggle to get away from.
Yeah. Now that you say that, I'm sort of like, oh yeah, that is the most, yeah, I bet if we went up through all of them, we would do that. Yeah. But you're right. And it's interesting. What came to mind, actually, it's going to sound like I'm off track, but I actually like to sink in examples from people's lives and make a broader point. Like this is a human thing. So I think I learned this from Gladwell back in the day, but it's and it was when selling shoes on the shoe floor with Rogue. But as helmets got better in the NFL, athletes started to lead with their head more. They leaned into more dangerous ways of behaving as the technology around them got better. We also see that same exact parallel with cars. As cars got safer and brakes got better and seatbelts got better and airbags got better, people drove more recklessly. We thought, I'm safe, therefore I can't, right? So we got further away from the feel of things. I'm not a teacher, but I'm close to I coach people who teach. I know a lot of teachers. I've heard teachers talk about how the spirit of everything was to develop a child's mind. And yet somewhere along the way, we started teaching to the test. And I think people can start to see where I'm going. It's like, as the technology around us gets better and we get these identifiable markers, quote, rooted in science, basically someone saying, in theory, you should be here, 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 here. And we try to codify it in the spirit of being helpful. This is what your zone 2 is and your zone 3, or we give different pointers for people to think about. But what happens as that technology gets better and we get these readouts, we start to say that like, well, what do I know? That's got to be right. We turn off our ability to sort of understand and pay attention to what's going on in us as a runner. And we start to just push it all over there in the safety of the seatbelt, the safety of the helmet, the safety of, shoes were that parallel too. As shoes got thicker and, we started to slam with our heels. Anyway, it's like people move towards measuring just the marker or looking at the form of technology, and they forget just how sophisticated the human body is. And I'm not promoting recklessness. I'm not promoting throwing caution to the wind. I believe in the markers. We talk about them. We've talked about zone 2 or easy running and how that's similar to conversational pace. But we always push this idea of conversation or sing a song or understand your effort and how it feels in your body, because we understand the value of being able to regulate the behavior as intended and only using technology as a helpful tool. But I'm just afraid people marry themselves to the technology and go blind on the other side of the equation.
I think in general now, this might be a bold statement, but the vast majority of people are blind to the effort they're trying to achieve. They're just focused on what their watch is telling them. And that is a fundamental problem. If you want to optimize your training, you have to be connected with the underlying effort. And that's from recovery runs to easy runs to how your long run should feel to the various pacing zones you should be at for workouts to understanding the difference by feel of aerobic threshold versus lactate threshold. Can you do that? And if the answer is no, it's okay, because these are hard things to learn. I've been running for 20 plus years and I feel like I can still learn on gauging effort, but I have a really good sense for it because I've been practicing it for a long time. And I don't think we're at a place now with the watches and everything else that people are even trying. They've lost the plot, so to speak, of like, how do I actually try to connect to those things across all of those different types of runs so that they can make sure they're getting the most benefit from each one. Because, I think a lot of people are wasting time on their feet because they're in the wrong place from an effort standpoint. And it's, and you're always going to improve at some level if you're just out there doing it, but there's huge gradations of ability to execute on it well to get the most benefit. And I would argue that maybe that's the one that's most disconnected from where people need to be in order to get the results that they want.
Yeah. Honestly, what it reminded me, there's two parts of me. I want to respond to a story I thought of, and then also if you think we should maybe help people with application on like what should they do or change. But I want to tell the story first. I remember talking to an athlete one time where they were just trying to re-enter programming and they wanted some priming workouts. And I think I assigned something like 8x800 at 10K, which in total is, what is that, 4 miles?
4 miles of work.
Of what you could theoretically run at your
10K
6.2 mile pace. And so with recovery sandwiched in there as well. And I remember even in the first couple of reps, his report back was, I can't seem to get into 10K pace. And I remember thinking, that's not your 10K pace then, right? Like even if on the, like none of the reps you could reach that, then all of a sudden we're off on what your 10K pace is. But again, he internalized it as very much like, no, the pace is fixed. I'm the variable, I guess. And it's like, well, no, currently your current fitness is very much, that's clearly not what your current fitness 10K pace is. But he was so out of touch with his body and where it was at the time that it was like, we were quite literally having two different conversations. The only
Right.
thing we agreed on was what a 10K pace is. Not his, just what quote 10K pace
Right.
is.
And that requires being honest with yourself, but it also makes me want to change change how we label things. We label the paces based on the race you could theoretically run at that pace, which is, at some level accurate, but it also is misleading because, as I like to say, there's training paces and there's race paces. They don't always match. Sometimes you're going to have a difference in them for whatever reason. And so it does create this perception that, oh, well, that should be my 5K pace. Well, maybe not, depending. So, and are you trained for a 5K or are you training for a marathon? In which case, maybe it's not at all. But
yeah.
Anyway, plus there's obviously the ebb and the flow. You talked about the peaking concept where your paces right before you a race are going to be different than your paces 6 weeks later. They're going to be slower and you want this nice linear trajectory. So you also have to realize that, hey, I have to train where I am to get where I want to go, which is a part of the equation too. So a lot of layers there, but to me, the most important lesson for people is to just remember that, hey, you need to be a student of your body and how it feels at all these different paces and also these different types of runs. And if you're not, and you're instead focused on what the watch says, then you need to step back from the watch and you're going to wear it, right? That's fine. We're going to track it, but you don't have to look at it. Or you can cover the watch face with tape or something like that. And I think we need to be doing a lot more of that, especially on easy runs and recovery runs. I was having a conversation the other day with somebody talking about recovery runs, and he was talking about how, it's been a quote game changer for him to just listen to his body and go as slow as he needs to on those days without really worrying about the watch. Whereas that's different operating approach than he was using before. And so he's like, it's been a game changer, like after these long runs, he's training for his first marathon. I feel sometimes pretty sore and beat up, but I go out there, I listen to my body. I start as slow as I need to get into it. And then inevitably I feel better as I go without forcing it. And I'm not sure that enough people are willing to do that because on those days, your watch shouldn't dictate the pace. Your body should.
Yeah, absolutely. I almost said this earlier, but you were mentioning how like people always want it to be linear. I think there's also a little hidden belief under there too, is that we always just want to be on. We want to be on at all times. We want to think that any given day I can snap my fingers and it's there.
Right. Not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We need to wrap this one, but that was a good little teaser for what is to come. Excited to be doing this project with you. We've got the book out there. If you go to our Instagram at Rogue Running, you can find the links to buy it on our self-publishing site, Ingram Spark. So go check it out, get your copy. We're going to be going through the chapters kind of week by week as we go, pairing up on this, which is going to be a lot of fun, bringing you some video content. It'll obviously be in our audio channels as well. So thanks for joining us on this new chapter of the podcast, guys. As always, you can check us out at roguerunning.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Rogue Running. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.